All right, how you guys feeling tonight? You good? Everyone good? Man, 5 p.m. This is the combined 5 and 7, y'all. So I'm expecting some fresh energy tonight. I believe that any single time we gather, that God shows up to meet us. And I believe he wants to meet us here tonight. I believe he has something powerful in store for us, and I don't know whether this is your first time at Amplify or, man, you've been coming for a long time, but God has something fresh he wants to say to you tonight. I really believe it. And it's dependent, though, you got to lean in. And I believe when you lean in, you're going to get something out of it. The more you lean in, the more you're going to get out of it. So I really believe that. So lean in, because I believe God has something important for you today. Hey, Super Bowl. Who's got Rams? Rams? Patriots? Okay, we still love you. That's all right. It's all right. Friends don't let friends root for the Patriots. Food and commercials. Food and commercials. Yeah, calories don't count today. They don't count. So, like Josh said, eat up. I'm a big football fan. I love the Super Bowl, so I'm pretty pumped to watch the game. I think I'm going for the Rams. Aaron Donald's a Pitt guy. He's one of their defensive players. So Pitt, Penn Hills, he went to Penn Hills too. So come on, I got to be cheering for our local boy. So I think I'm going Rams. But listen, Steelers aren't in it, so it's like whatever, right? My favorite Super Bowl all time, Super Bowl 43, 2009, Steelers-Cardinals. This was my favorite Super Bowl ever. Probably the most memorable for me. I was in college, and it was the last time the Steelers won the championship. Any football fans out there remember the Santonio Holmes catch in the back of the end zone? I mean, I will pay for that guy's meals the rest of my life because of that catch, okay? That was amazing. I remember that so vividly. I was out in the streets with champagne that night, y'all. Like, it was a party. That was February 1st, 2009. I'm never gonna forget it. 2 months later, April 1st, 2009, yes, April Fool's Day, I had something else important happen to me. I had a group of friends pull a prank on me, y'all, and this ain't cool. Anybody here like pranks and pulling pranks on people? A few people over there? Yeah, okay, stop it, all right? No one else likes it, okay? So you're the only ones. Knock it off, all right? We don't like it. And I personally don't like it, but here's the thing. If you're gonna prank me, I'm gonna get you back real good, okay? Like, I am gonna design a devious plan to make sure you know never to prank me again. That is the goal of the prank back, all right? And so I remember I came home from college, or I came home from class, and I walked into my apartment, and 7 of my friends, count them, 7 were in the living room. That's never a good sign, okay? 2 roommates, 3 neighbors, 2 random friends. They're all hanging out there, and I go up to my room, and I have a bathroom attached to my bedroom, and so I go to use the bathroom, and I can't open the door. I try to open it with like the normal amount of pressure you would open a door, and I could not do it. And I couldn't open the door, and so I'm not a small man, and so I go to push the door open with my body, and the door will not open. And I know. But here's the thing. I'm not like excited to tell you what was behind the door, because it's not a very manly thing that I could not open this door. My bathroom, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, was filled with balloons, y'all. That's it, just balloons. Nothing like crazy, nothing terrible, but full on inflated balloons. To this day, I still do not know how they got all the balloons into the room and closed the door. It was hours before I popped my way through all of them and had to clean up all the balloon scraps, which are miserable, before I could use my bathroom again. And I was annoyed. And so I knew I had to get him back. I wasn't gonna, take out all 7 of my friends. You gotta cut off the head, you know what I mean? Like, there's always one ringleader. And so I went for the one guy whose plan I knew it was. His name was Ray. Ray was my neighbor. And so I knew I had to get Ray back. Well, there was the following day. I knew Ray's schedule really had a little bit of a tight window between when he would get back from the gym and when he had to go and catch the bus to get to class. And so I knew it was during that window that I needed to strike. And so I go to my kitchen, and I'm a broke college student, so I don't got a whole lot in my kitchen, but I do got some chicken bouillon cubes, you know what I mean? Like the pack of chicken bouillon cubes you buy, and they're in your kitchen for 10 years because no one uses chicken bouillon cubes, and then a decade later you have to buy a new pack because somehow you use all of them. So I have my case of chicken bouillon cubes, so I get a few of them, and I partner with Ray's neighbor. I get into his apartment. I get into his bedroom. I get into his bathroom. And I unscrew the shower head. Yes. And I take some of these chicken bouillon cubes and I ever so slightly place them up inside the, whatever, coming out of the wall, the pipe coming out of the wall. And I twist the shower head back on as if I'd never been there, y'all. And he gets home, has to take a shower after being from the gym, and instead of hot water coming out of that shower head, it was chicken broth, y'all. Do not come at me. I will get you back. Balloons, you got one-upped. Chicken broth. It smelled like chicken soup for weeks in his bathroom. Like he could not get it out. It was amazing. Probably the greatest day of my life. I gotta be honest, it was relatively easy for me to have this mindset that I gotta get him back. This whole idea of like almost an eye for an eye or revenge or you're gonna get what's coming to you, that like makes sense to me in my human nature, and I feel like for most people that makes sense. A little bit of, the world should almost be fair. Like you will get what's coming to you, whether that's good or bad. And I believe we can wrap our minds around that whole concept. Most of our lives is kind of built on a performance-based mentality. Your job is based on performance-based mentality. If you do well at your job, hopefully you get a raise and get promoted, or if you do poor at your job, you're gonna get fired. If you do good at your tests in school, you're gonna do well in school. If you do poorly, you're gonna do poorly. That's just the way the world works, and I think we're able to wrap our minds around that. But when we see something in life that doesn't kind of follow that same pattern, it doesn't follow the pattern of fairness. It doesn't follow the pattern of someone got what they deserved. It almost makes us stand back and question what's going on. So like if you see someone at work who does not do well at work, but they get the promotion and they get the pay raise, it causes confusion, it causes anger, and you almost say, well, why did they get it? Or you might know someone, and for all intents and purposes, you believe maybe they're not a very good person, but it just seems like they continually get good things coming their way, and you just begin to question, well, why is that? In relationships, I often think that when we see relationships that aren't really based on performance, we admire those relationships a whole lot. I'll give you some example. Like if you see a relationship where maybe somebody messes up and the other person in a relationship just chooses to completely forgive, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's so incredible that person would choose to do that. When I see oftentimes a whole lot of relationships where if someone does something wrong in the relationship, maybe the other person takes it upon themselves to remind them constantly how bad they messed up. And that's the type of relationship none of us would want to be in, where maybe you're constantly pointing out the flaws of the other person. But rather, when you see a relationship, maybe from a distance, or maybe you're in one of these, and man, that's awesome, where you're in this relationship, and no matter what the other person does, it's like, no, we're committed to one another, and I'm gonna still choose to be near you, I'm gonna still choose to be committed, I'm gonna still choose to love you. Those are the type of relationships that I think stand out. Whether you're a church person or not a church person, like we all kind of want that in our world. It's because those relationships aren't necessarily based on performance, they're based on love. We're starting a new collection of talks today called Love Like Heaven. And this series isn't necessarily about heaven, but it's rather about love. And I believe that love is personified in the person of Jesus. And love actually came from heaven. Love came to interact with us. Love came down to meet us and talk with us and walk in our shoes and actually engage in relationship with you and I. He actually came down and wanted to be in relationship with us. He came to us. And this love is bigger than anything we could comprehend. It's bigger than the type of love that we know in this world. And the goal over this collection of talks is to try and understand this love to the degree that we would better feel it in our own lives, but also better show it to the people around us. So that's where we're going over the next few weeks. And today we're just gonna kind of dive right into just in general concept about this love that truly came down from heaven and began to talk with us in the person of Jesus. And Jesus himself, he said these words. He says, a new command I give you. Everyone say new. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. See, Jesus said this was a new command because he's talking to some of his closest followers, and these would have been people that were familiar with the religious customs of the day. And the religious customs were that up until this point, if you wanted to have right standing with God, there was a list of 613 rules that you had to follow in order to be in right standing with God. But don't worry, if you failed at following any one of those 613 rules, there was a secondary list of rules that would help you, that if you messed up over here, do this set of rules, and that would overcome the mistake you made for the first set. And so that was kind of everybody's understanding of how to have a good relationship with God. That's where you started, with this massive list of rules. Now, we've been talking for a while now over this last season of the church. I know I've heard Pastor Jason talk about this, that really the point of these rules that came down from heaven, the point of these rules weren't really ever that God was sitting up in heaven saying, I think they could possibly do this. I think they could follow all 613. No, that wasn't actually God's point. God's point with giving us 613 rules was to almost prove to us that there is no possible way that in and of ourselves we are capable of being in right standing with God based on our own effort, that we can't do it on our own, that we require somebody else to come in and intervene on behalf of us in order to have right relationship with God. That was the whole point of the initial set of rules. And so when Jesus shows up on the scene, when love shows up on the scene, he says, no, I want to give you a new command. I just want you to set these 613 aside for 1 second, and I want you to focus on one, love. I need you to focus on love. Another time he said, love God and love people, two things, but not really. It's one, love. And it's at this moment where he's kind of expanding, and he's kind of talking about what this love is, what this love means. And I think for you and I, it's important that we understand what Jesus' message was in this moment, this new command to love one another. And so I just want to pull out three things for our time tonight. The first one is this, that love is prescribed. Love is prescribed. See, Jesus knew that he had to tell us how to love. He couldn't just go on and say, hey, go love people. No, he had to quantify that for us. Because he knew if he left it up to us to really define love, we would do a poor job at it. In fact, I see that happening a whole lot in the world. We are really bad at loving others sometimes. And not just the church, but everybody. I often see in the world people doing a bad job at love. And I believe it's because, honestly, if we try to define love ourselves, it gets a little diluted. The term love almost gets watered down. I use the term love to describe my relationship with my spouse. That's the same term I use to describe the Oreo cookies I'm going to eat tonight, which is the same word that I use to describe The Office on Netflix. Like, I love all of those things. Amen to that. But it's understandable that I'm using that same word for those three areas. It's understandable that that word might get, a little watered down, a little diluted, that it's going to be hard to kind of carry the power of its meaning that it was truly intended for. And Jesus knew that. And so he said, I'm going to tell them this command to love, but I want to give them an example of how they are to love. And he says, I need you to love as I have loved you. And he says, this is the standard in which you are called to love one another. And now this type of love, this is, so much bigger than any type of love we could ever really define ourselves in and of this world. And a guy named Paul, he knew that it was going to be difficult for us, and he in fact said a prayer for me and for you that we might come to the understanding of what this love meant. This is what he prayed. This is in Ephesians. He says, and I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and how long and how high and how deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. He says, this love, it surpasses our knowledge. We can't even understand it. We can't even wrap our mind around it. He says, but my prayer is that you would just get a taste of it. My prayer is that you would just begin to understand how big it truly is, like how much love God has for you and for me, and how wide it is, and how big it is, and how deep it is. Jesus himself, he came on the scene and he wanted to describe how much really he loved us. And we find this verse, we say it every week, for God so loved the world. Not just loved the world, he so loved the world. The word so in the original language, if you actually look up to what the word so means, it means so. He so loved the world. So it's just a magnifier. He didn't just love the world, he so loved the world. And it also kind of points that he's going to then describe how much he so loves the world. He so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. See, he so loved the world that he gave. See, this love, this how big, how wide, how deep, how vast, this love is generous. This love is sacrificial. This love is selfless. The love that comes from heaven, the love that is personified in the person of Jesus, it is so much bigger than you or I could ever wrap our minds around. And God says, man, if you would just know how so loved you are, it changes everything. I think so often we get love wrong in this world. I think more often than not, we tend to love people to the degree that it benefits us. But rather, Jesus loved people to the degree that it would benefit them. He said, if I'm going to show love to someone, it's because I want something for them. I think too often, this watered-down type of love that you and I are familiar with tends to be, I'm going to love as long as I get something back. And I think too many of us find ourselves in relationships like that, and that is a performance-based relationship, and that is not how God intended things to work. Too often we find ourselves in a relationship where maybe we had a parent saying, I will love you if. Or too often we find ourselves in a relationship where maybe a boyfriend is saying, I will love you if you do X, Y, and Z. And we end up in these situations that God never intended for us to be in. But rather, this love is so much bigger than that. It's so much deeper than that. This love is something that he says, man, if you would just look to me, if you just would love the way I love, then I believe the type of love I want will be permeating throughout the world, and it will change everything. He had to prescribe what that was. Love as I have loved you. The second thing, this love is perfected. This love is perfected. I think whenever we first come into the reality of this love, when we become, we have an understanding of who Jesus is and what this love really is, and we have this really calling on our life that we are called to love in that same fashion, but I'm not sure any of us are truly capable to do it in an instant. But I actually believe that love can be perfected in us, that we can learn to grow in that love, that we can grow to be better in that love. The word perfect or to perfect, it means to conform absolutely to the description of a definition of an ideal type. And so if we are going to love like Jesus, really to perfect love inside of us is that I would love like Jesus. That's it. Jesus is the absolute, he is the, I don't know, I'm trying to explain that. Go back to the definition. To conform absolutely to the description or definition of an ideal type, the ideal type is Jesus. And so if I'm going to have love perfected in me, it's going to be that I look like Jesus in my love. That when they see the type of love that I display, it is a display of who Jesus is in the world. And for too many of us, I think that, man, we don't actually ever take the time to let love be perfected in us. I think a lot of times, people actually let love fade away in their relationships. I think it's a shame that far too often we see marriages that get worse at loving each other over time. But you can actually learn to love better. You can actually learn to love more. You can actually be in a place where tomorrow I will love people tomorrow better than I love people today. And today I'm loving people better than I loved them yesterday. And there is actually something that you can do in order to learn how to love better and how to love more. There's something you can do to let love be perfected in you. And Paul tells us this. I'm going to read the same exact passage I read a few minutes ago, but it's a different translation, so you can track with me. Back in Ephesians, it says, then you will be empowered to discover what every Holy One experiences. The great magnitude of the astonishing love of Christ in all its dimensions. How deeply intimate and far-reaching is his love. How enduring and inclusive it is. Endless love beyond measurement that transcends our understanding. And then this is the sentence I want you to catch here. This extravagant love pours into you until you are filled to overflowing with the fullness of God. He says, if you want this love to be in you, the only way that it happens, this love gets poured into you by the source of love. And so for me, the whole point here is that I would get close to the source. The source would pour his love into me to the point that it would then overflow out of me and hit the people that are now around me in this world. And so if I'm called to love the same way Jesus loves, if I need that love to flow out of me into the people around me, Paul says the way that you do that is just get close to the source. The way that you do that is just get more around Jesus. Because when you get around Jesus, it does something to you. His love comes in you. His love fills you up to the fullness of God to the point that it overflows out of you and touches every single person you come into contact with. So if you want to learn to love more, if you want to learn to love better, if you want to perfect love in your life, if you want to love like Jesus, you got to get close to him. You got to get near to him. You got to spend more time with him. And that can look a ton of different ways. That can look like prayer. That can look like digging into your Bible. That can look like just showing up to here every single week. It looks like getting around other people that are chasing after the same thing. It looks like getting around a community of people that are chasing after Jesus the same way you're chasing after Jesus. And I'll tell you this, I think too often I see people that are spending time around the wrong people and they don't actually grow in love, but they grow far away from love. I'll tell you this, it is almost impossible to love right when you're hanging with the wrong crowd. It is almost impossible to love right when you are hanging with the wrong crowd. And listen, I'm not saying don't ever hang with people that maybe are in a worse off situation than you. Jesus did that all the time. But if I'm going to go be around someone and I want to influence them, I better make sure that the majority of the time I'm close to the source and that he's filling me up. And I'm around other people so that when I'm near them, come on, it overflows out and impacts them. The danger is if you get around some people that you want to influence and you're not filled up, it's that they'll influence you more than you influence them. And so you got to make sure you're close to the source. You got to make sure that love is being perfected in you so that when you get near them, man, it overflows out of you. You don't even have to try, but they see this love coming off of you. You can be perfected in love. I have a fear as a Jesus follower. I think this is probably my greatest fear as a Jesus follower, not as a pastor, not as just a member of Amplify, but as the collective as a whole of the church. Anybody that claims to follow Jesus, I have a fear. And the fear is I will be connected to a group of people that claim that they know or desire this love that comes from heaven, but they would not actually show this love to the people around them. That they desire this love, but they don't actually reciprocate this love out. Here's what I mean. It's illogical to say you love Jesus and hate black people. It's illogical to say you love Jesus and hate gay people. You can go more broad than this too. I mean, it's illogical to say you love Jesus and then be a jerk to every single person you interact with in your life. It's illogical for these things to coexist. I'm not trying to get political here tonight, but listen, it's illogical to get into a position where you say you love Jesus, but then, man, you won't champion both sides of the abortion argument. That you won't defend the voiceless, but also defend the women who are going through really terrible situations they probably wouldn't ever really choose to be in. It's illogical to let those things overlap in your life. If you're going to say you love Jesus, you better show that love of Jesus to every single person in your life. I also think about the people that say they love Jesus and they might put up a good face, in public, but man, then they go home and maybe your spouse gets the worst part of you. Come on. If you're gonna say you love Jesus, if you wanna let love be perfect in you, you better learn to love more and love better in every situation and show that love every single chance you have that you have. But it's illogical to have those things be separated from one another. I don't wanna be part of a community like that. Last thing, that love is powerful when practiced. This kind of leads into it, right? The love is powerful when practiced. When you actually begin to display the love of God, this love that came down from heaven, man, it changes things. It changes me and it changes you. It changes communities. It can change cities. I believe it can change an entire generation of people if we begin to understand what this love really is and show this love. Man, it transforms everything. There is nothing that cannot be transformed by the love of God. It is greater than anything in this world. It is greater than any challenge we might face in this world. Love is bigger. And so if we display that in our world, man, it has the power to change things. And for us, I feel like, man, I want to be the answer to some of the problems that we have in our city. And I think there is a way that we do that, and the way is love. In 1 John 3:16, it says this. It says, this is how we have discovered love's reality, that Jesus sacrificed his life for us. And because of this great love, we should be willing to lay down our lives for one another. And so put it simply, because of what Jesus did for me, I should be willing to love other people. That's it. Because of the way he loved me, I am now called to love other people. Another way it says this in, I think, Galatians. It says, carry each other's burdens, and in that way you will fulfill the law of Christ. The law of Christ is just love. That's it. If you want to fulfill the law of love, you will carry each other's burdens. Listen, I believe that God carries our burdens so that we can carry the burdens of one another. That's it. He loved us to such a degree so that we might walk confidently in this world and carry the burdens of somebody else. And so when I look at this world, if I, had someone from our city come to me and begin asking me some philosophical questions, like who is going to care for the single moms in our community, I want to confidently say, yeah, that's going to be us. That's going to be this community that's chasing after Jesus. That's who's going to do that. Who's going to carry the burdens of the depressed in our community? Yeah, that's going to be me. That's going to be us. We're going to do it. Who's going to carry the burdens of the broken and the brokenhearted? Yeah, that's going to be us. We're going to play a role in that. Who's going to carry the burdens of the financially distressed? Yeah, that's going to be us. We're going to carry a part in that. Because of the way that Jesus loved me, I can't do anything else but love the people around me. And that has to be the DNA of this community. That has to be the DNA of someone that follows Jesus. There was a story from our Pittsburgh East location, a gentleman who got diagnosed with cancer, and it came quick. And he passed away last fall. And I feel like from the moment he was diagnosed to when he passed was 9 months. I mean, it wasn't long. And it was about midway through that timeline that he was having difficulty moving around. He had a walker, and he would come to church, all the time. And it was a group of people in our church. It had nothing to do with me, the pastors, the organization, Amplify, nothing to do with us. This group of people in the church knew this family, knew the situation, knew the trouble he was having. They pulled together time, resources, manpower, people with skill, and they go into his home. They rip out his bathroom and put in a brand new bathroom that included a walk-in shower. So up until the last days of his life, this man with dignity was able to get into the shower on his own. That is love being worked out. See, love is powerful when practiced. There was a woman, you might be here tonight. I've never met you. I've heard your story. And I don't know if this has been shared from the platform yet, but a woman who came to church here at this location for the very first time. And while she was here, she had her car broken into. And it was people from this community that rallied around her. They didn't know her. She didn't know them. But people from this community that rallied around her to help her clean out the glass out of her car. And this woman, and man, miraculously, I love that display of love that came around her. But it was, a day or two later, this woman goes home to find a check came to her through the mail that covered the entire cost of the loss that she had from her car being broken into. It's like, man, what a miracle. But to be honest, I praise God for the miracle, but you know what I loved more? The group of community that came around her whenever her car was broken into. I'm like, that was love. Love is powerful when practiced. If we actually begin to outwork love in life, church, it will change everything. I want to read another passage to you before I wrap up here. This collection of talks isn't about heaven, but I want to just take a glimpse into heaven for a second. Because this guy named John, and we've read some of his words already tonight, this guy named John, near the end of his life, God came to him and began to reveal to him the reality of heaven. He began to show him things that I'm not sure anyone else really has ever seen. And John brilliantly decided, I'm going to write this down. And 2,000 years later, we get to read his words about what he experienced. And there's a small pocket in this letter that describes just what he saw. And he's describing this great city. And I get the sense that he's trying to put words around something that you probably can't put words around. But he tries. And I want to read it for us. And it's in Revelation. It says, the walls of the city, the walls of the city were made of jasper, in the city of pure gold. And it goes on, it says this gold was as pure as glass. So it didn't look like gold as we know it. It was pure as glass. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. And it goes on and it talks about all these jewels that made the foundation that they were walking on. It says the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, and this gold was as pure as transparent glass. And the thing about this passage is God could have revealed this to John any way that he wanted to. He could have revealed to John that this great city was made out of anything he wanted to. But he chose to use these things of value, these jewels that we so value on this earth. He chose to use them in what John would see. And I find myself wondering, why are the jewels used to make up this city? And more than that, why do the jewels not look normal? Why are they clear? And later on, it would say the jasper was also as clear as transparent glass. So what's the significance of how we see them? And I think John's trying to tell us something. And I think God was trying to reveal something to John. That more than the things that we value on this earth, there is something in heaven that is so much greater than anything that we currently value. There is a treasure in heaven that is so much greater than anything we could ever possibly value in this earth. And when you begin to see that treasure for what it is, when you begin to see the magnificence and the beauty of that treasure, man, it changes everything. It changes the way you see things. And I think even the gold in heaven is like, I can't exist the way I used to exist, but I must be clear or transparent so that I don't obstruct from the beauty that is the real treasure in heaven. Because I'm not trying to take anything away from the magnificent treasure that exists in the person of Jesus. And I wonder if that's how we're called to live today. I wonder if God says that's when you get a glimpse of the treasure in heaven, when you get a glimpse of this love that came down from heaven, when you see it for what it really is, it changes everything about the way I live and the way I love and the way I talk and the way I treat my stuff. None of these things are actually meant to bring glory to me. None of them are meant to elevate my name, but actually the way I love would be clear. The way I love would be transparent. And so when I love people, they don't elevate the name of Ed. They don't elevate the name of Amplify. But no, the way we love is so clear that they see right through it to the source of ultimate love, to the thing that matters above all else, the thing that is greater than anything we can ever know. Hey, come on, let's stand to our feet. I want to look into heaven tonight. I want to see this love for what it really is. I want to have it invade our lives in this place. Come on, everything we got. We bring our faith. We bring our expectations. Jesus here. Come on, church. Everything. Let's go.